It's time now for the Gem Young Wealthcast. Brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, a family-owned independent insurance and financial planning agency since 1947. Now, from their studio on Star Center Drive in Canfield, Ohio, here's the host of your program, Leo Daprile.
Welcome to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. Well, today we're going to have our first part in our client interview series. We do this once a year where we bring in different clients and we talk about what's been going on in their life. We talk about what we've been doing with their financial plan, how that's all integrating together, any challenges that they faced, any changes in their life that they're dealing with, and how all of this is working together. So I'm bringing in one of my favorites. He often calls himself the serial entrepreneur. I have with me today Gary Wakeford. Hey, Gary, thanks for coming on today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I always look forward to doing this.
Yeah, and you're easy because you're pretty straight up about things, and that's what we like on this podcast, is people to be just honest and straightforward, and you're always good with that. So,
well, I appreciate that. I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, so last time it's funny because this is one of those scenarios, and this is a lot of scenarios where, you know, in a husband and wife situation that they split their duties. Mm-hmm. And all duties within a house are important. And some spouses rely on the other spouse to handle more and manage more of the financial affairs. Mm-hmm. And it's equally split in our practice of some of them. At times it's the man, sometimes it's the woman. Doesn't matter, but this responsibility typically falls more to you than to Wendy.
It does in terms of working with Gem Young and following our investments and things like that. That's my half of it, but Wendy manages the money in terms of the household. I mean, in terms of paying the bills and managing our cash flow and all those sorts of things. That's all her. I can't remember last time I wrote a check.
So it's a true team effort on your part. You've just split the financial duties based on the operations and,
Sure.
and the investment strategies.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's good. That's healthy. You know, I find that when both spouses are engaged, that seems to be the healthiest outcome to that.
I would agree with that, without a doubt.
So tell me, let's start with where you guys have, let's talk about the past year. We'll get to the money. The money always sort of ends up in this podcast, in the conversation. So just give me an update on you and Wendy. Last time I saw Wendy, we were at, oh gosh, I don't remember the name of the place, but it was like a craft sort of place that my wife likes to go to. Kimberly likes to go to every year, and we ran into Wendy there.
Yeah, she had mentioned that.
Yeah, and it was cold that day, like it's been cold here for like the last 9 years.
Oh my God! It had, last week it got up to 60 degrees, and it felt like summer. People are walking around without coats on, and their sweaters unzipped, and everything else. It's
right.
There's nothing as relative as weather.
And then we're going to find out that come next October, when we hit 60 degrees, we're going to have coats on.
Oh yeah, it's going to be cold.
Yeah,
Sure.
right. We're going to have the opposite scenario.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, so she looked great. She seemed happy with things. We were spending money. Both of us were spending money.
Of course, that's what it's for.
Yeah. But it was a quick exit for me because it was just a little too cold for me.
Okay.
So, but I was a trooper. I went.
Got it.
Yeah. So anyhow, how have you two been?
We've been just fine, thank you. We in April of last year, it's coming up on 41, but we celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary.
God bless you guys.
I've been very, very fortunate that, I've got a very strong partner. We still love each other and we still like each other.
That's important.
That's a wonderful thing. Last year was challenging from the business standpoint. As you know, introducing me as a serial entrepreneur, I am still working with an early stage startup company. Been a lot of challenges in raising money. Capital is really tight to come by right now. So, that kind of put a little bit of a hiccup in, what our normal plans are and things like that. But, that's just part of the game. It always is. And, people ask me, what's it really like running a early stage company? And my pat answer is it's living the dream, one nightmare at a time.
And they do go that way sometimes, don't they?
They do, without a doubt. But, you just have to always believe in your mission and believe in what it is you're trying to do. For our particular product, it's a medical device product. So I just always remind myself of the millions of people that really need this product. And we just have to stay the course until we're successful and we get this product out there to help those people.
And this is one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show, is because not every year in your life is hunky dory.
No, without a doubt.
And no matter how well we build out a plan, there's something I like to say sometimes the bullets just come at me, right?
Sure.
And this is it. This is life for everybody. Bullets come at us, and our plans change. So even though the commercials show everybody, with gray hair and suntans riding bicycles
Sure.
with palm trees around them, right?
Yep.
The reality is that's not most of us.
That's true. But I've often believed, and I've often noticed that when you're going through one of those challenging periods, you can't let it affect your outlook, and you can't let it affect your optimism or your personality. You're going to have tough times. It happens, but you can't let it affect your attitude and your outlook, because that is what will get you through it, and that's what will change it more than anything else.
Let me ask you this question, sort of a deeper, fairly philosophical question.
Sure.
And I've been asking folks this question lately, and it has to do with longevity.
Okay.
When we're 50, our perspective of longevity is one thing.
Sure.
At 68, right?
66.
66, your perspective of longevity is different,
Sure.
right? We kind of, as we age, we generally feel closer to our mortality.
Of course.
And do you find that it changes your perspective on how you work and the relevance of work to you than maybe even last year?
Sure. It always changes it slightly, but I've got probably a very different outlook on that than a lot of people. You talk about a lot of people, all they want to do is retire. All they want to do is retire, and they want to get to that stage. That's never been one of my big goals. I mean, I'll get there, and it'll happen, and I will know when I'm ready to take that next step. But I'm a person that, I always need to have a challenge. I need to have something to focus on. I need to have something to really throw my heart and soul, my heart and soul into. And I still really very much love what I do. I enjoy it. I really do. And I'm not ready to give that up yet. Now, the one change one of the changes I've seen in myself over the years is early on in my career, I was 100% all in all the time. So, I mean, I was working 12, 14-hour days, all day, every day, and I had no problem with that. As I've gotten older, what I've tried to do is I've tried to teach myself to be as efficient as I possibly can during work hours so that I don't have to do it in the evening.
Okay.
I'm try to find ways to really have a better balance so that in the evening I can enjoy time with my wife, or I can read the books I want to, or just kind of re-energize myself, or have that downtime. You need to walk away from it. The other thing I would share with people is, even if you love what you're doing and you're throwing your heart and soul into it, you don't want your career or your job to become your whole identity. Because I went through that one time. I'd spent 15 years with a company. It was getting promoted every other year. It won every sales management award the company ever had. And through no fault of my own, on a day's notice, I was let go. And the new president that came into the company, just, his attitude was kind of, if you were here before me, you've got to go,
Right. That's common.
It is, but it was really hard to swallow, a hard pill to swallow at the time, because for 15 years, that was my identity. That was who I was. I mean, that's, whenever anybody would talk to me, it was always talking about work and what are you doing and what are you managing and where are you going. So when that was just pulled away from me with no notice, that was really tough. So the lesson I learned there is you should never completely identify yourself by what you do or what your career is. It's just part of who you are, and you need to understand that, and you need to live that, so that if and when something like that happens, you deal with it.
So let me ask you this question. You brought up something earlier, and I hear it all the time. and you hear it all the time, and this idea of people wanting to retire is and I say many times on this show, that's a very emotional conversation, even though it's very logical. But a lot of people keep saying they can't wait till they retire. And that always disturbs me because that tells me they're terribly unhappy today and they're just trying to get somewhere and they're robbing themselves of their life along the way.
Agreed.
And some people think they put a date or an age in that.
Yep.
Okay. But I see that when people do that, once they, because I'm asking different questions these days the longer I'm around, is I'm saying if you took money off the table, what does your life really look like every single day? And people that say, I can't wait to retire, many cases don't have a long-term answer to that. They have a short-term answer. They're sick of the politics at work.
Yeah.
They've done this for 40 years and they're sick of it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, but the next day, if you live another 10 years, 3,650 days, what are you going to do?
Well, here's something that I've always thought of. And my first job out of high school, I worked for a company where we delivered to supermarkets. They were called rack jobbers. So when you walk into a supermarket, we filled the sewing and hair care racks, the Hart's Mountain Pet Supplies, the Hyponex spotting soils, things like that. Well, I'd walk into a store. I'm, 17 years old at the time, and a store manager would just totally unload on me and blow up on me. And I mean, it was really nerve-wracking. And I had a tough time dealing with that. And the owner of the company at the time sat me down and he said, Gary, you've got to learn to deal with that. That probably had nothing at all to do to you. You were just the 10th driver who showed up that day, and he's already having a miserable day. And he said people shoplifting in his store and trucks and had nothing to do with you. You've got to learn to deal with that. So he suggested that I take a Dale Carnegie course in human relations. So I took that course at 17 years old. And one of the things I learned throughout that course is no matter what you do for a living, for 30 or 40 years of your life, you're going to spend probably more time at work than you are at home. It's just do the math, do the numbers. Yeah. And so find something that you enjoy. I feel sorry for people that have to get up every day and go to a job that they really don't like. They're spending probably 40% of their lives there at that job, whatever it is. So I've always really tried to find something that I enjoy doing. So I like going to work in the morning. I always have.
I think that's key. And I like to talk about, you hear me talk and use words like disengaging from your current profession. I use that phrase a lot.
Sure.
And when I do that, it's about helping people reset their minds on, they get so committed to working for something. And there's things we say that we know in our business, Gary, that there's many people that are more afraid to fail than they are desirous to succeed.
Agreed. I think most people fall into that category.
So they stay in jobs because it's the devil they know.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree.
Even though they hate it. So that's why we introduced the phrase of disengaging from your current profession, to get those people to start thinking a little differently. Because if you've gotten pretty good at your craft, more often than not, there's a lot of people looking for that craft.
Sure.
Right? But people don't sometimes have enough belief in themselves to say, let me disengage from what I really don't like anymore and go discover something else. And to be honest, some people, when I ask them what else would they do, they really don't have an answer to that.
Sure. Yeah. And those are tough decisions. That's never easy. But when I look back at my career, the toughest decisions that you make always tend to deliver the best results. The example that I would give you is early on in my marriage, I worked for Nestle Foods Corporation in consumer products. And I was offered a promotion, and at first I accepted it, but the more me and my wife talked about it, it was a major relocation. And we just decided that wasn't for us. That's not what we really wanted. But it was a gut-wrenching decision because at the time I had been there for a little over 2 years, was putting in those 14-hour days, did everything I could to get that promotion, and then to have to turn it down was really difficult. But it ultimately was the best decision I ever made. And not too long after that, I ended up transitioning, leaving Nestle's, and I had an opportunity to get into medical device sales, which where I've spent my whole entire career. And I've made far more money than I ever would have made if I'd stayed in consumer products. And I've been exposed to some wonderful things throughout the country. Through work, I've been to every state in the union except Alaska.
Wow.
I mean, I have really seen this country, and I have met some wonderful people, and I've loved my job doing it. None of that ever would have happened if we hadn't have made that really difficult decision at the time that we did.
And that's really important for people to hear because you've disengaged from several professions, some of them voluntary,
Yep.
some of them involuntary,
Yep, without a doubt.
right?
Yeah.
And I think what holds so many people back because through all of this, we've helped you with your discipline savings and things you've done in the past that the aspiration for the work optional lifestyle, you're kind of there.
Sure.
But it's the choice of the quality and how your life goes from here is what really matters to you. So that's why this is about money, but really not about money.
Exactly. Something my father used to always kind of figuratively beat into our heads when we were children was he said, look, family is the most important thing in your life. He said, your job or your career is not more important than your family. But, and this was a very big but, he said, it is every bit as important as your family because without the job or the career, you can't have your family and you can't provide for your family. So, they're as important as each other, and it's making sure you devote enough of your time and your effort to both.
Right. And then always achieving that balance.
Sure.
Right.
Sure. And that changes. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do. One of the biggest changes that my wife and I went through was when I got into medical device sales and I started to get promotions, there was significant travel involved. And I mean very significant travel. For most of the decade of the 90s, I was gone 3 or 4 nights a week every week. I was away from home more than I was at home, but everybody's different. The compromise, the reason that worked for us is because it was more important to my wife that we stay here and then we didn't have to relocate. And so she was willing to learn to make the adjustment that I was going to have to travel a lot because it meant that we could stay here. And that was really important to her.
Again, back to balance and back to honest conversations with your spouse. And that's why you're going on 41 years because the effective part of the reason is effective communication.
That and Wendy's a very patient person and she put ups with a lot, without a doubt.
She's a very sweet individual.
One of my favorite sayings is when I do something really stupid, which I am known to do from time to time, she just shakes her head and she says, "It's all right, Gary. It's not your fault. You're a boy and boys are stupid."
So as you're at this stage of your life, that's hilarious, by the way. And I know Wendy, and I could just hear her saying it actually. Yeah. Are you having different conversations with Wendy about, is she saying, okay, I don't know if this is true, but I'm just going to ask the question. Is she starting to say things, okay, do you plan on slowing down at some point in time? Is she asking for more time from you? Are you having conversations like that yet? Or is she still like, just do what makes you happy?
We definitely have those conversations without a doubt. And from her perspective, I think it's more about her love and her concern for me, because she'll just remind me like, you do have to retire at some time and we have to make sure that it's a good transition and we do it in the right way. So yeah, we have those conversations, in which you should always have all of those conversations with your spouse. I've known a lot of people in my life that have lost their family over careers. And the one thing I've noticed with a lot of them is they have these conversations with all these people that they work with or all these people that they're friends with, but they don't have the conversations with the spouse, which is the most important one they should have these conversations with.
I see that, and sometimes they don't have the conversation because they're at odds before the conversation starts.
Sure, that could be.
And I see a lot of that. But the ones that are the most successful with it are people like you and Wendy that have the uncomfortable conversations at times about what people really want and then find a common ground to it.
Sure. I would agree with that.
Right. So do you find yourself, and here, I think one of the things important that I want listeners to hear is you didn't pick a date to say I'm going to be retired.
No.
And I think that's important because that means a couple of things. Number one, you're living in the present, which is in today's world. I tell my wife Kimberly, the challenge with what I do for a living is I'm always planning for somebody else's future. So my day is always about the future.
Sure.
So I really have to work to be in the present.
That's the hardest thing that I've ever tried to do, and I'm not very good at it.
Wow.
Literally always being present in the here and now and totally focusing on the person you're talking to. It is always a challenge for me. It is very difficult.
Because there's so much noise that comes into our day.
Sure.
That's, and most of it, let's be honest, most of it's a distraction. It's not relevant.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
But it's still there.
Yeah.
And all those thoughts are in our mind when we're trying to have conversations.
Yeah.
But that's all part of the learning process. And as we age and evolve through these things.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's a couple of key takeaways here so far is, and I say this on the podcast a lot, and people say, when should I retire? Well, when we start a financial plan, we always peg a date, peg a year to say, because we have to start that hypothetical. And that's what I like, that I'm using that word more. That's a hypothetical disengagement time or retirement time.
Sure.
But it goes to a whole bunch of other conversations about thought. Like, what are you going to do when you get there? You know, if you take money off the table, what does your life really look like? And people are wrestling with that. And I say, as long as you're wrestling with that, don't stop working. You know, because if you're wrestling, you part of your brain saying, I'm here, I'm supposed to be, or geez, it sounds good.
Yeah.
But the reality I'm finding in many cases isn't that way. Okay. So the fact that you haven't hit that spot where you say, look, I'm ready to, when I'm out, I'll tell you when you're done, you'll know. And I know that's a cop-out answer. I say that all the time, but you'll know.
Yeah,
you know,
I believe that.
If you're in conflict with the answer, you're not ready. Okay?
Yeah.
Because both worlds are still pulling you. Okay?
You know, I've known a lot of people that I've worked with that are now retired, and I will say that they all tended to worry about it. Would they have enough, and would it be okay? And by and large, almost all of them have said, yeah, I should have done it sooner. I mean, yeah, the money's working. Yeah, we've made some adjustments, but I'm loving life. And the other common thing I hear from people is that are retired, they're so busy, they say they don't know how they ever had time to go to work.
Right. Because those are the ones that had passions outside their job.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I got to stop here just for a break for a minute. I have with me here today Gary Wakeford, the serial entrepreneur. We're talking about what it's like as you're approaching retirement. You're in a work optional lifestyle situation. You're still choosing to work. So a lot of interesting conversations so far and more to come. This is Leo Daprile. This is the Gem Young Wealthcast. We'll be back after this break.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know insurance can feel complicated and overwhelming. That's why our team is here to listen, understand your unique situation, and provide solutions that work for you. From home and auto to life, plus a team dedicated just to commercial insurance, we help protect what matters most without the stress. Don't wait until an issue arises. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 to schedule your fit meeting and get the protection you need today.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we believe your financial goals deserve more than just a plan. They deserve a team. From planning for a work-optional lifestyle to managing risk and supporting your everyday needs. Our financial planners, paraplanners, and service team work together to build a strategy that truly fits your life. Planning for the future will help you make that confident financial decisions and achieve lasting peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today, 330-533-6936, to schedule your fit meeting and start building your financial future.
Now, back to the Gem Young Wealthcast, brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Once again, here's Leo Daprile.
Welcome back to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. If you're just joining the show today, I have with me Gary Wakeford. He is my serial entrepreneur friend, and we're talking about the different transitions in retirement or the next engagement of your life and where people are. In Gary's particular situation, he's 66. He still works because he loves it. That's his purpose. And we started having a conversation before the break about how some people weren't sure what to do in retirement. We had a conversation about once people did finally retire, that they're too busy. They don't know how they ever worked in the first place, which I hear that a lot. So first of all, Gary, welcome back.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
So that's some good stuff, because those are when I hear people say they're so busy in retirement, they don't know how they ever worked.
Yeah.
I actually love to hear that.
I hear that from most of my friends that are retired. I really do.
That means they landed on their feet.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's why, again, I start, since one of the aspirations that we've always had as a firm is we help our clients build the work optional lifestyle, as you know.
Sure.
It's not a slogan to us. It's an aspiration for what we do with our clients. And then once we get people there and they're still working, that's when we start having the conversations of, okay, what's next? Mm-hmm. And so that thought can take years.
Absolutely.
And in your case, for instance, there's still great satisfaction for what you do.
There is. Yeah, I absolutely love what I do. I enjoy every day of it.
And I tell my clients, if that's how you feel, don't stop doing that. And when you get to that point where you kind of aren't as excited to put your feet on the floor to do it in the morning, that's when I say you'll know.
Yeah.
You'll be like, there's something. I have clients that are working in their late 70s and 80s that didn't need to work for the last 20 years.
Sure.
But that's their purpose.
Yep.
Right? But part of the reason I wanted to have you and part of the reason I do this series for the whole month is there's so many thoughts people have about how they define retirement, when they should do it, and then people sometimes passionately download that to other people. Mm-hmm. For instance, someone that may have retired at 62 may look at you and go, I can't believe you're still working. I don't understand that. You could be doing this, you could be doing that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's their value system, right? Without really getting to know what your value system is, right? Yeah. Okay, so that's those also tend, because I'll have people come to me and says, I see all my friends retired. I'm wondering if I should. And I'm like, well, that's a deeply personal question.
Sure.
Don't rely on your friends to answer it for you.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because everyone's different. And what motivates me and what makes me happy could be totally different from other people.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So let me shift gears here for a minute, because it's something we spoke about on the break. And I think it's completely relevant, because we talked at the beginning of the podcast how you and Wendy split up the financial duties in the house.
Correct.
Okay. And I'm going to challenge you first. And you said you don't remember the last time you wrote a check, and she relies on you to handle the investments.
Correct.
And one of your concerns is, well, if something happened to me, she's kind of at a ground zero start, and that gives you some angst.
It does, without a doubt, because I've always worked with you and Gem Young on our on our investments in our portfolio, and you've done a wonderful job, by the way.
Thank you.
But I'm 6 years older than Wendy, and men usually die earlier than women do, and I do worry that when it's my time to go and I'm gone, that she really hasn't been an active part in learning the investment process and in what you do for us and how you do it. And I think it's important that at some time we transition her into this so that when what's most likely to happen does happen and I'm gone, it's not foreign to her and she doesn't have to worry about it. And she understands how it works, and it's not going to knock her off kilter when you turn on the 6 o'clock news and they say, oh my God, the stock market dropped 500 points today. Big deal. It went up 600 points yesterday.
Yeah.
You had taught me about that is you have to be careful of not getting sucked into the headlines because, they love to do stuff like that. But I think that she's very, very good at managing our cash flow and taking care of all of what I'll call the home finances. But I think that it would be very good for her to learn this side of the fence as well.
So let me ask you this question, and I'm asking this question for the sake of our listeners.
Sure.
How would you like to see that in your mind? How should that process go? How should we solve that?
I think the first step would be for Wendy just to start coming to our quarterly meetings.
Okay.
And learning the process and seeing what we go through and what we discuss and what you share with us. And part of that process would be for her to understand that you have a whole professional team at AssetMark managing our money. So it's not like I personally have to get very involved and say, sell this or buy this or do that. That's all done for us. And I think that understanding that we have a very good professional team managing our money and looking out for it, that alone I think would go in a long way. But I think it's learning the process that we go through when we work together.
So here's a thought. Because she's always invited to the quarterly meetings and she always says, Gary, just go ahead and handle that.
Right.
What if we changed one of the meetings to like an annual strategy meeting? Instead of bogging her down in the details, which is what she's relying on you for.
Sure.
Change the next meeting to just a financial planning strategy meeting and let her understand the strategy of everything first.
Sure.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think
Do you think
it
that'd
does.
be helpful?
I do.
Okay. That way we can bring her back in the fold.
But I'm not the boss. We have to run this by her first.
Just, this is where we adapt.
Right.
But then this is where, because we've talked about that for a while, because we joke now that she's not showing up for the quarterly meetings.
Well, this is not Wendy at all, but there are a lot of couples that this does happen. I had an aunt and uncle. My uncle was a banker, and he took care of all of the finances, both home finances and business finances. He was the finance guy, and my aunt was always the homemaker. And she never had anything to do with any of that, all right? Well, when he passed away, she got what she thought was an invoice in the mail, and she called her daughter and said, Kathy, this is like a few $1,000s. I don't know how to write this check, and I don't know what this is for. Well, her daughter went over and looked at it, and she said, Mom, this isn't an invoice. This is a check. This is money coming into you, deposited into your account. But it just shows that, she had no clue as to how any of that worked because she never did any of it. And I think that there are probably a lot of spouses out there that are wonderful, do a superb job of managing the cash flow and the personal finances, but they've never really taken the time to learn about the other side of the fence, which is the investment process and in that whole world.
And you and Wendy are not alone in the clients we serve. And part of the challenge I have, and the part of the challenge you have, is Wendy has complete trust in you. So it's okay that she doesn't know about it,
Right.
which is part of the challenge I have with other clients too.
Sure.
I have other clients, and both husband and wife, I require at least an annual visit, conversation. And some of them like, yeah, we're fine. I'm like, no, compliance reasons says I got to get you in here.
Yeah.
And I have some that are just that disinterested overall. So I worry that with neither one having great interest in it, it's going to fall to one of them at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely.
I've had other scenarios where we've had a spouse die prematurely, and the other
It's every day.
yeah, and say the other spouse says, all I was told is if I died to call you. And yeah, so I've literally had those scenarios.
Sure.
So we actually have a process for that because we see that a lot, on how to slowly bring those people back up to speed.
Yeah,
on
it's
things.
wonderful that you have that in place.
Yeah, because one of the things we don't try to do is change people. Because if some people just rely on their spouse and says, "Look, I'll learn it when I need to learn it,"
Right.
we just say, "Okay, when the time comes, we'll bring you up to speed."
Yep.
So there's always just so you know, we always have a plan B with that.
That's good to know.
Yeah, and then when they know they have to learn it, then they engage.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
And
And maybe that's the process for certain people, and maybe that's the process we should follow. I don't know.
Yeah.
You probably already know this, but Wendy is much smarter than I am anyhow. She'll probably look at it and say, "What are you thinking? We should." All right, move over, buddy. I got this now.
No, I think she's been here enough and kicked the tires enough that she knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And she knows what you do.
Yeah.
But, sometimes it's not about, in most cases, and I'll say in all cases, it's not about the intellect. It's about trusting the other person to handle it.
Sure.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Right?
Yep.
And it still doesn't mean you and Wendy don't talk about things. She still wants to know.
Sure.
So you still have those conversations, but the tactical scenario is up to you.
Yep.
Okay.
Got it.
All right. I just want other people to know that they're not alone.
Okay.
In how they feel on that. So back to the question I started asking you about the quality of your life going forward, because a lot of people start thinking when they get here that they want to enjoy their golden years before before they become what I call the rusty years.
Yeah.
Which sadly in many cases the last 5 years of people's lives are not everything they thought they were going to be.
And people don't think about that. They always think about, well, in the future, I'm going to be the same person, but I'm going to have all the time to do what I want to do. But 10 years from now, I'm probably not going to be as healthy or as active as I am right now. And people forget that. They just don't factor that into their thinking, I don't think.
They don't. And the challenges, so here's our challenges. Right now, and I just read this statistic, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal, so let me try to give the right publication credit, is the life expectancy has now increased again, 79 for men, 80 for women. We build our financial plans for, as many of you know, for women to 92 and men to 94. Especially if you're somebody in your 50s or early 60s, that seems to be playing out.
Yeah.
We're having conversations now that if somebody passes in their late 70s, that they're young. We're early 80s, they're young, right? 30 years ago, we weren't having those conversations.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
So we look at what our current mortality is versus what projected mortality is. There's still a pretty big gap.
Sure.
But there's a lot more 80 and 90-year-olds out. And so the position we've taken as a financial planning firm is we don't know which one of our clients are going to get there.
Right.
We don't know which ones are not.
Yeah.
But if we don't plan for that longevity, we didn't really do a good job, did we?
That makes sense. Yep.
So there's that balance of not just when you decide to stop working, but what does your distribution pattern look like? Mm-hmm. It's never cut in stone.
Right.
And that's what makes me crazy when I see all these commercials when people say you need to have an X pot of money
Right.
to be able to retire. And I'm like, well, how do you know that? With a simple 6-question questionnaire, they're going to answer your question on what the rest of your life's going to look like.
Yep.
And like we're talking about, look at the dynamics to it. Look at, wanting to subsidize. I have a lot of clients that, that might still be working that says, you know what, my investment accounts have done pretty well. I want to take some off the table and do some other things. Mm-hmm. Without a detailed plan, how do you know that's a good idea or not, right?
Exactly.
So I have a lot of clients, especially over the last 3 years, Gary. We've had, I don't want to make this about returns, but we've had such crazy good returns for most of our clients over the last 3 years. Our conversations are changing to, for instance, having more conversations about legacy planning.
Oh, sure. And, the returns have been so strong, as you say, the last few years that we'd be having a totally different conversation if I knew that was going to continue. If I could make as much every quarter as we've been making, then we probably would be having a very different conversation about retirement.
Yeah.
But it's always the unknown that, you really have to your point, have to have a strategic plan that really takes all possible scenarios into account.
And I think what keeps me grounded through all of this, Gary, is in my career, I've lived through, I'll call them 7 significant financial shocks.
Sure.
Be it significant market corrections, be
Yep.
it significant corrections, be it significant world events,
Yep.
that making sure that we can survive those and my clients can survive those is always something I'm thinking about.
Sure.
You know, because even though we've done incredibly well for 3 years, and most of our clients, our plans were running way ahead of schedule, which is a good problem.
Yeah.
I'd rather have that problem than
Absolutely.
than say I just blew it, right? So it's lending itself to different conversations, which might even have you thinking of things a little different. That what if, and you know, past performance is never an indication of the future, but what if this went on another year, maybe 2?
Mm-hmm.
And then what if we got back to normalized market returns and normalized market corrections after that?
Yeah.
You know, there's an interesting statistic I heard. I was recently at a conference, and the Russell 5000, an index,
Yeah.
years ago, and I forget the years because it was a presentation of a product, but the statistics were true. But it said when they came out with the Russell, let me make it up, 15 years ago for the Russell 5000, there was 8,000 companies that qualified to be in the Russell 5000.
Okay.
Several years later, that number went down to just a little over 5,000 companies to be in the Russell 5000. Today, do you know how many companies are actually in the Russell 5000?
Not a clue.
3,400.
Wow.
So the Russell 5000 isn't even the Russell 5000. The point is, so many companies have either merged, gotten rolled up, that there's a lot less company stock to buy than there was years ago.
Oh, never would have thought of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's changing the landscape.
Yep.
You know, there's been such a wave of, you hear it all the time, private equity. You're trying to find it and tap it all the time in your job, right?
Yeah.
That private equity's been buying a lot of these companies, right? They've been taking them off the public market and taking them private. There's that much private money out there that is kind of changing and shifting the whole investment landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to see where that plays for our clients, you know, because we have access now to private equity and private markets. But I'm also learning that's a very interesting game. I'll use that word.
Yep.
A complicated game, complicated rules, a lot of, there's no standardization because it's the private market. You know, when they're public markets, there's public reporting, public
Right.
standards, you know, a lot more trust in what we're doing. But it's kind of changing the investment landscape and seeing where that plays into the future of how we start helping our clients manage their investments, which ultimately the objective is to manage that work optional lifestyle.
Right.
So I think as time goes on, the point is I think our conversations might start to shift.
Mm-hmm.
And as we start to, and I'm one of those guys, you know, like Apple. Apple was never really good at inventing anything. They're always really good at coming out a year or two later with a really good product, but they've never been on the forefront of innovation, like with their iPhones.
Really?
Yes.
That shocks me. My impression of Apple was always just the opposite, that they were the first and they came out with things that no one else could.
No, like look at the AirPod. They weren't the first. Everybody else was. They just came out with one small, really cool that worked.
It's
that took
better.
over the market.
Yeah.
They did the same thing with the iPhone, right?
Wow.
Did the same thing with their AirPods. They waited till they saw what was out there, then said, let's go design something really cool.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I am when it comes to new investment products. I'm not going to be the guy on the front line saying, hey, here's the new shiny object. Let's see if this fits in your portfolio. Then have to come back to you in 2 years and go, you know, I kind of blew it on that. You know, I'm not going to do
what works first.
Right. All right. So even though there's this access now to these private markets, we're, you know, being judicious about it. So anyhow, that I know I went a little off track on that, but that all plays into how we think about saying, okay, making sure you stay where you're at.
Yeah.
You know, how do we need to shift beyond just strategy? Like what I compete a lot, what I see a lot out in the market is, I'll call them packaged portfolios. To me, those are like, we stopped using that stuff like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But I see it all the time.
Sure.
Because for most people, it's a set it and forget it scenario. And
Oh, yeah. Most financial planners, once they have your money, they spend all their time trying to bring in new money and not enough time managing your money. At least that's always been my impression. You don't fall into that category, which is why I'm here.
Right. Right.
Now, let me ask you this question, because it's a question that I think almost everybody in the world asks and no one has an answer to, is when you look at your long-range investments in your strategy, how do you know how much is enough? How do you answer that question?
That's an excellent question. So what I do is when we get to these gains in the portfolios, I'll do things like run the portfolio saying that from today through the end of time, the best I ever do is 3%.
Okay.
And I'm running an inflation rate of 2.5%.
Okay.
So I'm showing a raw rate of return of 0.5%.
Mm-hmm.
And does that work? If that works, I'll go back and run a 0% rate of return, knowing that I'm losing 2.5% purchasing power every year. And if I get to the point where we're not running out of money, then I'm saying, okay,
You've got enough.
you got more than enough. If I have to run it at 5%, then I'm like, be like, well, it's enough, but we just got to pay attention, right?
Yeah.
But when I get to those numbers where I drop them like that, then that's what we get to. So,
Okay.
yeah, so that's where I kind of answer that question. I try to put, instead of just saying, because a lot of people, Gary, will say, look, I have $1.5 million. That should be enough.
Right.
But that doesn't answer the question. It feels good,
Yeah.
but it doesn't answer the question,
Correct.
right? So that's how we do it. That's where we just really dig in and diagnose the true element
Yeah.
of what it is and give people that level of confidence. So I love to tell people that if you only need 3%, then that lets me be a complete loser the rest of your life.
And you're still good.
And you're still good.
Got it.
All right. Well, Gary, hey, thanks for coming in today. It's great to talk to you as always. Really appreciated it. And I have Gary Wakeford, my serial entrepreneur, who's still going at it and still loving what he's doing. This is Leo Daprile. This is the Gem Young Wealthcast. We'll be back after this break.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know every financial journey is unique. That's why our team of financial planners, paraplanners, and service professionals work together to provide personalized strategies for a work-optional lifestyle, investments, and risk management. We're here to help you plan for today, protect tomorrow, and enjoy the life you've worked so hard for. Take the first step toward financial confidence. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-6936 to schedule your fit meeting today.
Hey, it's Medicare Jer here from Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Medicare can feel confusing, but I'm here to make it simple. With the right Medicare Advantage or supplement plan, you can worry less about unexpected healthcare costs and focus more on enjoying life. Let's make sure you've got the coverage that fits your needs and gives you peace of mind. Call me, Medicare Jer, at Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today at 330-533-7941 to schedule your appointment, and let's get your plan in place.
By calling this number, you will be speaking to a licensed insurance agent to answer your questions or provide additional information about Medicare Advantage plans, prescription drug plans, or Medicare supplement insurance plans. This is an advertisement for insurance.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
Now, back to the Gem Young Wealthcast, brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Once again, here's Leo Daprile.
Welcome back to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. Well, this was our first segment of the show, and I had with me one of my good friends, Gary Wakeford. Always love to talk to Gary. He's very insightful. He gives you a lot of deep perspective, and he's real. That's what I think I like the most about what he is, and he's authentic. And it's the first perspective because many of you, especially as you're approaching your retirement date or the disengagement date, and you're in that situation where you're not sure what to do, this is real for so many of you, that you're not quite sure whether it's time or when the time is. You're kind of like what you're doing. The idea of not doing anything also is appealing as well. But this was a conversation of just being real about where we are in our lives. And some of you just know that when it's done, and you hear me say that on this podcast all the time, you know. And in Gary's case, he's still getting a lot of satisfaction out of what he does. Him and his wife, Wendy, are in agreement, and I think that's something I want you to take away from this, that these decisions you make when you're in a relationship need to be thoroughly talked out between the spouses. And for most of you, that does happen. But this is an example of a very healthy relationship, 41-year healthy relationship of two people that really talk about the things. And at the end of the day, they're in lockstep on what really matters to them as a couple, not just what's best for the particular individual. And to give you some nuance of what it takes and how investments continue to improve for our clients that are putting them into a different situation where they're having the ability to maybe make decisions a little differently than they have in the past. You know, Gary gave some insight to job challenges he's had in the past year and I'm glad he brought that up, because for so many of us, you heard me make reference, if you're listening to the whole podcast, about the commercials you see of the older couple with gray hair, with suntan, riding bicycles with palm trees behind them. But for many of us, that's not the case. That's not what it really looks like. And having honest conversations of what you want out of your life and how that plays out in your life is important. But knowing at least where to start. You know, one of the things I learned recently, I was at a convention and one of the speakers said, don't be afraid of the beginning. And I thought that's an important statement, because it has to do with, don't be afraid to begin something new and know that you're going to be the beginner. And for many of you, as you approach this next phase of your life, you're going to be that beginner. But being that beginner gets you engaged in the game. And then don't be afraid to make changes once you get into the game. That's all what this is about. So just because you don't have the answer today, that's okay. And be okay not being okay at times. So again, I appreciate you listening. We are a podcast. Check us out anywhere else that you get your downloads. iHeart, Apple, we're all there. All right, I appreciate you listening. This is Leo Daprile. This is the Gem Young Wealthcast. Until next time.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know insurance can feel complicated and overwhelming. That's why our team is here to listen, understand your unique situation, and provide solutions that work for you. From home and auto to life, plus a team dedicated just to commercial insurance, we help protect what matters most without the stress. Don't wait until an issue arises. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 to schedule your fit meeting and get the protection you need today.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we believe your financial goals deserve more than just a plan. They deserve a team. From planning for a work-optional lifestyle to managing risk and supporting your everyday needs. Our financial planners, paraplanners, and service team work together to build a strategy that truly fits your life. Planning for the future? We'll help you make that confident financial decisions and achieve lasting peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today, 330-533-6936, to schedule your fit meeting and start building your financial future.
Join me every week where we talk anything and everything about your money. Have a topic you want to hear more about? Email Katie, that's Kayti, at gemyoung.com. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and the iHeartRadio apps. Until next time, this is Leo Daprile.